Who's the more foolish, the fool or the fool who follows him?
Yo, what's up? The Geeky Coach back for another review. This one on Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 4, The Foundling. So I'm going to start off with kind of my overall thoughts on the episode. For anybody that follows me on TikTok, I gave a similar review in the opening or in my 60-second reviews. But this is the first episode of the season that feels a little adventure of the week. However, they do a ton of character development throughout the episode. So the episode starts off kind of where we left Din and Bo back at the Mandalorian covert. And what we find is kind of a Mandalorian training session to kick things off. And this episode does a lot of character development in the sense of we get more myth and lore about Mandalore. We get Bo-Katan kind of adapting to the creed. We get Din Djarin settling his score with Taz Vizsla. We get a Grogu training session. We get a Grogu flashback. And then we really wrap things up with the armorer kind of imparting words of wisdom on Bo-Katan. And so we'll kind of walk through the episode step by step. It starts off with the Mandalorian training session and Mando, Din Djarin, wanting to train Grogu or have Grogu begin to train so that he can kind of advance from, you know, a Padawan, a learner, an apprentice, or into an apprenticeship. And so it starts off with him in a training session, combat training session with another young Mandalorian, another young Foundling, and Grogu's not sure how he feels about it at first. He kind of starts off and is shy and nervous and takes two little, paintball gun darts to the chest. And then Din is like, I've seen what you can do. Do it. And of course, Grogu does his, Yoda-like thing and flips over the kid, flips back, and then pop, pop, pop. And kind of wins the training battle after Mando has explained that Grogu doesn't wear a helmet yet because he can't speak. He can't speak the creed, and you only speak if you know is kind of the line that gets uttered both by Din Djarin and by Taz Vizsla. And so that happens, and as the training sequence kind of wraps up, a young Foundling, who we later find out is Taz Vizsla's son, Ragnar Vizsla, which I will get into here in just a second, is abducted by yet another monster. So a pterosaur flies in, grabs the kid, Bo-Katan, Taz Vizsla, Din Djarin all kind of take off after it, and they aren't able to rescue the child because their jetpacks run out of fuel and the pterosaur gets away. However, Bo-Katan wasn't using a jetpack. She used her ship and tracked the monster. And so eventually she leads out a hunting party to basically go retrieve the child and find the pterosaur nest. As they're leaving and gathering up to head out to find the pterosaur, and it's Bo-Katan, it is Din Djarin, it's Taz Vizsla, and I think like 3 or 4 other unnamed Mandalorians. As they're traveling to the pterosaur nest, what we find is the armorer kind of taking Grogu under her wing and bringing him into the Forge, at which point she talks about how the Forge is really the center of Mandalorian culture, which, they've been kind of hinting at it, but Mandalorians are dwarves. I mean, we've got a kid named Ragnar. The Forge is the center of their culture. And as Grogu is watching the armorer forge another piece of armor for him, we get a Grogu flashback. And what this flashback does is really show us how Grogu escaped the Jedi Temple. And Grogu escaped the Jedi Temple. We had kind of seen, a few unnamed Jedi walking Grogu through the temple when the clones attacked during Order 66. But what we end up with is the return of Ahmed Best and Jedi Master Kelleron Beck. And Kelleron Beck, this is not the first time he's been introduced. However, it is the first time we've kind of seen him in action because Kelleron Beck was the host, and Ahmed Best was the host of the Jedi Challenges on, I think it was either on Disney Plus or on Disney Channel or something like that. That, what is it? That Legends of the Hidden Temple Jedi show. And this is the first time we see Kelleron Beck really as part of the canon of Star Wars. And so Ahmed Best, for those who don't know, is the voice of Jar Jar Binks in the prequels. And for him to have the opportunity for really redemption, kind of as an actor, and to bring the Kelleron Beck character from, you know, a game show into Star Wars proper, was really cool. And so as Grogu is escaping the temple, Kelleron Beck finds him and helps him escape with the help of some Royal Naboo guards who are waiting for them. And Kelleron Beck escaped the Jedi Purge of Order 66. So I'll be curious to see if we end up running into Kelleron Beck or if Kelleron Beck died later on and we get flashbacks of how Grogu was really left alone. And I think that that's an opportunity for us to see Ahmed Best doing more in Star Wars. And I think that, you know, we're going to see that flashback, whether it's again this season or they hold it till next season. I think what we're going to see is kind of how Grogu was left all alone. And Grogu then is given this big kind of medallion piece of armor that has the Mudhorn as his signet, which is also cool because in Mandalorian Season 1, the Mudhorn is when we first see Grogu kind of use the Force to assist Din Djarin during the egg hunt, Suka, for the Jawas. And so that was just a fun piece, and you know, seeing him in action was really cool. After that, we kind of go back to the Mandalorian hunting party, and they arrive at the pterosaur nest. It is up on this big peak. They spend the night. They camp at the bottom of the peak, and we see Bo-Katan really, again, leading Mandalorians and leading the charge, the hunting party, but she's still learning. And so as they make camp and as they make food and rations are handed out, Bo-Katan turns to the Mandalorian and basically says, so how do we eat if we can't take off our helmets? And Din Djarin explains, you go off, you find a spot alone where you can remove your helmet, and you have your dinner. And as Bo-Katan gets up to leave the fire, Taz Vizsla walks over to her and says, you're leading this party. You have the honor of staying by the fire. And I think this is really starting to give credence to my theory that Din Djarin is not the focus of The Mandalorian. Din Djarin is not the main character is not the main character in these stories. Din Djarin is an NPC or a companion character at best. Yes, he does a fair amount in terms of, in terms of his missions and how he helps, etc. But at the end of the day, these stories aren't about him. These stories have been about Grogu. These stories have been about the Darksaber. These stories are about Bo-Katan. And I really, truly believe that this season of Mandalorian is not about Din Djarin. It is about the rise of Bo-Katan Kryze and how she is going to take her place as the rightful heir to the throne of Mandalore. And so after they have their dinner, we're kind of taken back to the morning, and they begin scaling this peak. And we get a really cool kind of Mandalorian rock climbing scene. And they reach the top of the pillar and arrive at the pterosaur nest. And as they get there, they realize there are babies in this nest, which Taz Vizsla and Din Djarin kind of mistake for the captured child, which has its own little bits of humor that we get, these baby bald pterosaurs nipping at Taz Vizsla. And then finally the mama pterosaur returns carrying Ragnar Vizsla, Taz's son, back to the nest. And a really cool kind of battle sequence, flight sequence, chase sequence ensues from there. And at the end of the day, Bo-Katan is the one who kind of leads the charge in taking down the pterosaur. Din Djarin is the one that actually saves the child, saves Ragnar from falling, and returns Ragnar back to his father, Taz Vizsla. Thus, I hope, squashing the beef between Din Djarin and Taz Vizsla. And hopefully House Vizsla now feels indebted to the Mandalorian, to Bo-Katan, and we start to see a unification of the Mandalorian houses from there. So they rescue the kid. Bo-Katan is seen as a leader. Din Djarin is in good graces with Taz Vizsla. And when they return, the Armorer notices that Bo-Katan has lost a pauldron during the battle with the pterosaur. And so the Armorer then offers to repair Bo-Katan's armor. And as Bo-Katan is sitting there in front of the forge, in front of the fire, the Armorer asks her if she wants the owl, the night owl sigil or signet on that pauldron, the similar to her other pauldron. And Bo-Katan responds, would it be appropriate to take the mythosaur? And the Armorer responds that all the mythosaur is the signet of all Mandalorians. And Bo-Katan confesses that she has seen a mythosaur. And at first the Armorer, says, hey, you're walking the way, you're following the creed. That's a good vision to have. And Bo-Katan's like, no. In the waters under the mines, I saw a mythosaur. To which the Armorer, of course, responds with only, this is the way. And this is why I really, truly believe that this season is about the rise of Bo-Katan. And nobody deserves it more than Katie Sackhoff. She deserves the opportunity to kind of lead this. I am actually curious to see if the Mandalorian kind of continues with following Din Djarin, or if it becomes more about Mandalorians in general. And I'm really excited to see where this season continues to go. Right now, we don't really have a main objective, a main mission that is kind of a MacGuffin that is leading this season at this point, given that they've already been to the waters, already been to the mines, and we're kind of left hanging a little bit, which is awesome in the sense that it leaves open the door for opportunities. We know in the last episode we saw remnants of the Empire, kind of ambush Bo-Katan and Din on at Bo's castle. We know that what we saw with Dr. Pershing and G28 or G38 or whatever the hell her name is, we know that there's something going on there. And we know that based on where we are in the timeline, that the First Order is beginning to form beyond the outer regions and beyond, probably in wild space and in those kind of areas. And we know based on the end of Rebels that Thrawn and Ezra are somewhere out in the outer reaches or in wild space. So I'm curious to see what becomes the main antagonist for the Mandalorian at this point this season, especially after the first 4 episodes were just so good. And this is the first time in a while for the Mandalorian where we've gotten to, probably mid-season, because they're usually, I think, 8. And I haven't run across an episode where I'm like, I'm bored. They've kept it engaging. They've kept the story going. Again, love what Favreau and Filoni are doing here. Love the fact that we're focusing on Bo-Katan Kryze. I do think that we'll kind of circle back to something around the Darksaber, probably in the next episode, to start what I'll call the back season arc. And we'll go from there. As always, if you got questions, comments, tell me what you think about this season of The Mandalorian so far. Do us a favor, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. and look forward to talking more Star Wars with you either here at the Foolproof Entertainment Network on YouTube or over on my other socials at the Geeky Coach on Twitter, on TikTok, etc. And with that, peace out, fools.